Welded Designs in SOLIDWORKS 2011 sees a lot of great new enhancements. Let's start with the most basic, a part model that happens to be a weldment. It includes structural members, end caps, and gussets. Pretty typical of a welded design inside of SOLIDWORKS. The first new thing that we see in SOLIDWORKS 2011 is the new weld bead tool. It's slightly different than the fillet bead tool you've had in the past. It's a new, easy-to-use, streamlined interface. All we need right now is a bead size and to select two components that intersect with each other. SOLIDWORKS automatically finds the intersection of those two faces, but we have further refined choices, such as all around in this case. You can see that SOLIDWORKS creates a nice bead around this intersection, but more importantly, it's a lightweight cosmetic weld. It's no longer a solid body like it had been in the past. That means for your complex welded frame designs, there's no longer an extra burden on the system to include your welds, so feel free to add them wherever necessary. We'll look at a slightly more challenging scenario. In the case of these two tubes that intersect at a perpendicular intersection, there's a slight gap there. SOLIDWORKS no longer has any challenges with these cases. Simply select the two components like before, and SOLIDWORKS creates the weld with ease. If we want to exaggerate it a little bit more, we could look at a case where there's actually a full gap in between the two tubes. And just as you would expect, SOLIDWORKS is able to tackle this as well. But it's not just limited to these simple fillet beads. What about a groove weld? In this case, we already have some weld preparation included into our design. We're just going to select the two inside faces of the groove, choose all around as we did before, but this time we're going to modify the weld symbol slightly. We're going to specify this as a V-groove weld. SOLIDWORKS fills in that groove just as we would expect. For a slightly more complicated scenario, or more detailed weld, we may want to go ahead and put some staggered or intermittent welds on here. The new weld bead tool handles this quite well also. We'll simply choose this gusset in this tube, and below you'll notice that we can choose both sides where we've been selecting all around before. Below that we can choose intermittent weld and specify this by gap and weld length or pitch and weld length. In this case we're going to specify a weld length and a pitch. And finally, to really clean it up, we'll add a staggered weld to it to give our design a little bit more rigidity. One thing we haven't seen while we've been adding these are the annotations that are created. You'll notice that for every weld, SOLIDWORKS creates the appropriate weld note annotation. It not only includes the weld symbol, the weld size, but also the weld length, the staggered value, and even the staggered annotation on the note. One more weld we want to create here is going to be a from-to weld. In this case, we'll choose the gusset and the tube, and we can see that when we choose from to, we get a nice convenient instant 3D-like user control. We simply grab the arrows, drag them to where we want them to be, and hit OK, and SOLIDWORKS creates the nice appropriate weld. Weldments are great at the part level, and we've been able to do this in SOLIDWORKS for some time. But the really new and exciting thing in SOLIDWORKS 2011 is the ability to create these exact same welds inside of the assembly environment. To do this, however, we may need to incorporate some things such as weld preparations. To accommodate this, SOLIDWORKS 2011 now supports fillets and chamfers at the assembly level. To make this easy, we'll just create some fillets on all these tubes that need to have welds applied to them. Simply selecting these faces, we can see that SOLIDWORKS creates this weld preparation with ease. This means that your designs more accurately reflect what it is your final product will be. To finish this off, we'll add a couple of those weld beads here at the assembly level using the exact same tool we used before. One of the things we haven't seen up until now is the new Weld Quick Selection tool. We can see that with this button we can simply drag and drop across the intersection of any tubes in our design, and SOLIDWORKS automatically creates the appropriate weld where necessary. We'll hit OK, and we'll see that SOLIDWORKS now quickly created many more welds than we had before in a single step. This means it's extremely fast and easy to add these welds to your complex designs as well as lightweight. Finally, no weld design would be complete without some documentation. New enhancements to drawings that directly affect welded designs include changes to the weldment cut list table. A bill of materials in an assembly has a lot of capabilities, and we see more of them moved over to the weld cut list table. We've always been able to do a simple sort on a weld cut list table, but now we can further refine that with simple drag and drop operations that allow us to intuitively reorganize our welded cut list. The other thing we want to look at is how do we document all those welds we've created in our gantry design. A new type of table is available called a weld table. Simply go ahead, choose the view, and drop it on. We can see that this table includes things such as the weld symbols, the weld length, the quantity of welds, and if we had included material, that as well. It even captures things such as the intermittent weld as well as the V-groove symbol here. Hopefully all these new weld design tools will allow you to be more flexible in how you create your welded designs in SOLIDWORKS 2011.